All right, here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Non-Victim Nation podcast. Today I am joined by Chris and George, who is the founder, I believe, of Canine Defense.
Yes, sir.
All right. And so I always like to have people introduce themselves because you know obviously more about yourself than I do. So with that, George,
And I know only to say the good things, so we'll be okay.
thank
Yeah.
you.
George Daniolos here. I'm founder of Canine Defense. It's a company we work with. Our main client right now is law enforcement, but we've worked with just about every type of working dog over the years, as well as pet dogs, and that's what we specialize in: making dogs do the things that are really important, keeping people, saving human lives. It's a passion for us, especially some of the guys on the team have a very personal connection to the patrol dog from their experience, and that's what we're out here doing.
Awesome.
And I'm Chris.
Yep.
I lead most of the business development side of things in the company and also the protection dog side of things.
Hmm.
So basically, if you're like a civilian or anything that's interested in a dog for protection purposes,
Hmm.
it'd be more on our protection dog side of things.
Right.
But as George said, we do a lot of law enforcement work and we also do a lot of just civilian dog work, not related to protection, just behavioral modification and stuff like that because police and protection is really our passion, but
Hmm.
we also don't make any money off that stuff. It's more of like a passion hobby thing for us.
Right.
On the pet dog side of things, we get to help people um, and make sure they have good lives with their dogs.
Hmm. So I was just curious, were either of you prior military law enforcement?
No.
No?
We're
Okay.
just regular Joes.
Just there you go. Um, and so, like, what was it that got you started in this and like wanting to make?
So for me, like dogs was something that I grew up out here in the desert,
Mhm.
and my dad had a dog that was became really good at hunting rabbits. We And that fascinated me from a young
Mhm.
age. And then as I got older, I started reading about canine behavior like my last few years of college. And then I got into training and took off from there. It was a passion. I got into competition shortly after that. I was competitive in a sport called PSA for the most part. I dabbled in other things, but PSA was kind of the sport I was most in. It stands for Protection Sport Association. It's
Mhm.
very similar to some of the scenarios that we run with our police dogs in training.
Right.
Um, and it was a great journey for me. I started competing in PSA in like 2000. 2006, I won a national championship, and I'd won many things along the way. After I became successful on the competition side, I started having people ask about training and coming to me for training advice, which is what I was doing for years, is finding
Right.
the people that were winning and trying to figure out what they were doing right. And I decided, there's a need for some business here, and
Mhm.
a lot of the guys that I was close with from school were in the law enforcement realm, and some of them were canine guys, and started helping on that side, and
Mhm.
noticed some things that were some real big holes in some of our police dogs, and
Yeah.
that's where I started to really try to progress training.
So when you say holes, you mean like there wasn't sufficient training, or the dogs were like failing at certain tasks?
There were some failures
Hmm.
happening, and my one of the things that really when you talk about dogs that bite people, the only thing that can really teach, like you can have the best genetics in the world for this,
Hmm.
but the only thing that can really teach a dog to bite is the decoy, right?
Okay.
So the better the decoy understands the psychology and what's
Hmm.
happening for the dog internally in the fight, the stronger the dogs get.
Okay.
And so as this time while I was training, I got really into the decoy side of things. So when I started working, um, a lot of the police dogs, I
Hmm.
started finding big holes in what they're able to deal with when you put pressure on them. And so,
Hmm.
I said, and I would point it out, and some guys were really happy and receptive about it. Some guys were not so happy and receptive about it because
Hmm.
egos get involved. We get really attached to our dogs.
Right.
But ultimately, I'm not helping anyone if I'm not honest about what I'm seeing when I'm evaluating,
Hmm.
especially a police dog, because
Right.
it's such a critical task.
Yeah.
And so that was where I started to. there was definitely some controversial times, and some
Yeah.
people, didn't like, some guys liked me, some guys didn't like me, but ultimately, I think I was able to help and make a difference in a way to where it gained us a lot of traction.
Mhm.
Then that's how our business really kind of solely became focused on police dogs, probably around 2010.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember the last time when I was talking with you and Wes, that was part of the conversation that we had is like the importance of the decoy. And the way that I kind of put it or kind of framed it in my head is sort of like if you're rolling in jujitsu, your partner, how well they're training with you has a lot to do with your training too. They can't just lay limp. I mean, they have to
Right.
actively be engaging and giving you
And
something to
challenge you.
work with. Yeah.
Right. If
So,
you're rolling with somebody that you're just whipping up on all the time, it's
right.
not,
Yeah.
you're not getting better.
You're not learning anything.
Yeah,
Right.
challenging in the right way, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
if you're sparring with, you know, a guy that's really experienced, you'll
Mhm.
probably learn more
Right.
from him than sparring with someone that's not very experienced, right?
Right.
So it's not all just about fighting.
Hmm.
It's so much more than that.
Yeah. Because I know that a lot of people, when they think of like the decoy, it's just like a target for the dog to
A
bait.
dummy
It's
in a
like,
suit. Right.
People still think
you
that
know,
way,
yeah.
right? Like that's still sometimes the mentality, which
Hmm.
is contrary to popular belief. Like, the most experienced trainers are the guys that are in the suit for us,
Right.
right? Because it's a very, very important role for them.
Hmm.
I've been, this was, I don't know, recently we had a new agency come down, and the command staff came in and they met us, and I'm getting out of the suit, and one of the guys says to me, he's like, "You're the owner. What are you doing in the bite suit? Like, you got
Yeah.
young guys for this." And I said, "This is where I want to be. Right? Keeps
Right.
me in touch with where our dogs are,
Hmm.
and it's really important. It's a really important job. It's not one of those things where as I get older, the more I realize, like, this isn't something I want to let go. I want to
Yeah.
decoy as much as I can, as long as I can, because it's one for one, it's something I really enjoy, and
Hmm.
two, uh, I'm able to find things in dogs that need to be addressed while they're training, so we don't put them out into real world environments
Hmm.
with holes, things that
Yeah.
because a dog can quickly go from an asset to a liability in no time at all.
I got you.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of important to make the distinction between an actual like protection dog, like the type of training and things that you're doing, versus just like a dog that you have at home that's there as like your early warning system. Because people might, you know, combine those two or conflate those two things. But I think that there really is a pretty distinct difference.
Huge. I
Absolutely.
think and I think a lot of people are gonna listen to this and
Hmm.
be like, "Nope, my dog knows. My dog knows. I know." And this one time I was walking down the street and there was this really like creepy dude and he would have bit him, really.
Hmm.
But no, like I think a lot of people get upset about the reality of their
Hmm.
dogs
Right.
because the majority of the time, the behaviors those dogs are exhibiting that you think is going to be protecting you is really just the dog being insecure and scared,
Okay.
right? And I'm not. It's not a blanket statement. Look, I'm sure there's,
Dog bites happen all the time, right?
yeah,
But
and any dog can bite, right? Like you can make most dogs bite, right? But
Right.
if we're talking about real protection,
Yeah.
it's a totally different thing than that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I've been charged by teacup chihuahuas that would definitely bite me if I let them.
yes,
But that doesn't mean stop me from doing whatever it is I wanted to do.
yes,
So,
absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know,
And it is one of those things where dog bites happen all the time, but most you know dog bites are happening from a defense standpoint, not a
hmm.
predation standpoint. And
Right.
so the dogs we're using aren't biting out of fear or self-preservation. They're
Hmm.
biting out of a predator mindset, which is
Hmm.
what we want to create in these dogs.
Hmm.
It's we talk about it all the time. It's really easy to get a dog to bite, but get a dog to bite the right person at the right time,
Hmm.
regardless of the chaos happening in the environment's a very complicated skill.
or no chaos at all,
Right.
right?
Okay.
Completely neutral. Go get this guy. He's not
Right.
showing you any kind of aggression. I want you to bite him.
Like
And
Hmm.
that dog is going to be like, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
like a very common call for some of the agencies we work with here are biting or kind of a test bite. Like, they get into a shootout with somebody, guy is down, he may be laying near the firearm or on, and
Mhm.
they don't know if he's playing possum or not.
Right.
Right? He's not complying. He's not saying anything. But if a human goes in first, and that dude's faking it, he might still be able to grab a gun and get a shot off or whatever might happen. So they'll
Mhm.
send the dog kind of a test bite, see what they get. So that from a dead guy, you're not getting anything. So the
Yeah,
dog
right.
has to be like completely clear on when you hear this sound, you go bite the target without a second of hesitation,
Mhm.
and it's really important.
Right.
So there's a lot that goes into getting to that point,
Mhm.
but the things we kind of look for in the process are the correct genetics and then the correct training.
Mhm.
You know what? I might bring up something a little bit controversial. You hear a lot of people in the protection dog world talk about like you can't have a protection dog be all prey like that, right? Because they won't bite a person if they're just standing there, right?
Uh, go ahead with your. I don't want to get
No,
into
I just wanted to
terminology.
open a dialogue about it.
Um, I don't necessarily think that that's the I know what you're
You know what I'm
talking
talking
about.
about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's
And, they're vague about it, obviously,
sure.
but you know, because
Um,
those are the type of people that kick into defense a lot more,
sure.
and basically get the dog in more of that mindset of um, defense and
Right. Well,
self-preservation.
yeah, and which is what you're talking about is like
Yeah,
trying working a dog from the set of like I have to bite because
right.
I've created uh, a bit of superstition, and that's where the dog is biting from, and there's nothing wrong with that. The mindset though is that what we try to create is that we don't want the dog ever thinking about self-preservation when it's
Mhm.
fighting a human.
Okay.
So we may tap into things that stress the dog
Mhm.
before the bite, during the bite. Um, but the ultimate mindset is the dog understands that like things might happen.
Mhm.
And when we say so, the human is prey and prey may fight back,
Right.
but the dog is always the predator. And if
Right.
they have that mindset, we've had dogs stabbed, we've had dogs shot, we had, you know, uh, one of our main guys, his dog was shot twice in the line of duty and stayed on the bite,
Wow.
survived and stayed on the bite. We've had other dogs shot and killed. But so we
Mhm.
know that the dogs are going to have to deal with some real bad
Mhm.
individuals, and we want to make sure that they're prepared for it. And so
Right.
we want to induce as much stress and kind of push the dog to their threshold every time they get into a fight. So they get into this fight, they feel stressed, and they overcome. They get into this fight, they feel pain, they feel stressed, they overcome.
Mhm.
So it develops this mindset of, yeah, this prey might fight back, but I'm always the predator, and they're in that mindset until they,
Right.
it might be their last breath, but they're still in their head going, I know if I go forward and bite harder, I'm
Mhm.
going to win because
Right.
that's been the history I've always had.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
So like really, really powerful, right? Like
Mhm.
the dog gets shot twice, stays on the bite,
That's saying a lot.
right? And the handler
Wow.
walks out alive, right?
Right.
But on the streets today, we have dogs that like on the other end of it, right?
Mhm.
Somebody, opens up their jacket and yells, that dog might not actually bite that person,
Right.
right? And there's a huge lack of funding for canine in general. So,
Mhm.
hey, if anyone's interested, reach out to us. We got a nonprofit.
Uh,
There's agencies that need our help.
Right.
So we'd be
Yeah.
more than glad to take your money and help out an agency.
Right. So like in that sort of training that you're putting them through, do you do like stress inoculation in the way of like simulated gunfire or like other types of distraction like things?
We do. We do. We try to build. So with gunfire, we want total neutrality.
Hmm.
So we put gunfire everywhere but in the fight in the beginning. So because we don't want the dog hearing gunfire and trigger and being that a chain to aggression,
Okay.
right? Because
Right.
if
Right.
their handler's firing a gun, we don't want the dog um, aggressive towards gunfire,
Right.
right? The way that I think we used to do more of it was like get the dog real high and drive, send him on a bite, and on the way to the bite, fire off a few rounds, and it's like when they're in that high prey, it doesn't bother them. But then what happens is you have a dog that becomes kind of a link between gunfire and aggression, and that's not always beneficial. So
Right.
we want total neutrality to gunfire. We'll start
Hmm.
some, we start it with, from a distance, smaller caliber. Dog will be, basically doing some food training,
Hmm.
right? And some rounds going off, and it's almost like white noise. And
Right.
then maybe we'll do some play with something that they like to bite. We'll do some obedience and play, and we'll get a little bit closer. And over time, the dog is just like, it doesn't mean anything, right?
Right.
Like I and
Yeah.
um, so neutrality is ideal for things like that. Now, as far as like other environmental stressors, dark rooms, slick floors, tight spaces, those are all things that we kind of navigate in a similar way. We want the dogs kind of um, happy-go-lucky
Hmm.
around things that might be environmentally stressful for
Hmm.
domestic dogs. So
Right.
um, we basically teach them outside of bite work that the world is their playground.
Okay.
Anywhere they go, like you just navigate it like it's your agility field.
Uh-huh.
Jump up on the bathroom sink. Which is very different from a pet dog, right? Like a
Right.
pet dog, the last thing you want is counter surfing,
Yeah.
right? But we discourage if we create some type of superstition in a police dog, and he's like, shoot, I don't want to get up on that counter. That thing burns, right? Or whatever
Right.
might happen. It hurts to get up there. And now we need the dog to, search a house, go over the counter and bite
Yeah.
somebody. We got to be really careful about those things because it's like a pet dog. You might say, hey, I never want my dog jumping on the counter.
Right.
But like something like a police dog or
Hmm.
any type of real world bite dog, we want them thinking the whole world's their playground,
There you go.
you know?
So there's nothing that's off limits per
Right.
se. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Do you ever run into issues where like dogs are afraid of heights, small spaces? I mean, do they have those sorts of things?
Absolutely.
So
Okay.
it kind of
Absolutely.
like goes into even before, right? The stuff we were just talking about, like it
Hmm.
goes into genetics so much deeper than that, right? Like
Hmm.
there's so many people that think there's so much to do with training, and yeah, like training, there's a lot to do with it. But
Hmm.
like for us, that's the easy part. The training is the easy part. The hard part is finding those ideal genetics.
Hmm.
Um, so difficult, and a dog. You can expose a dog 15 times until he's comfortable with an environment,
Hmm.
right? But if he goes out and work and then a variable changes and he goes into a different environment, he's not comfortable with it, right?
Right.
A dog that's strong genetically in those areas, it doesn't matter, right? Whether he's
Hmm.
been exposed there or not. He might go into a different environment every day, but he's like totally comfortable with it,
Right. So
right?
there's not going to be hesitation about
Yeah,
pursuing somebody or going someplace that needs to get.
yeah. Like a huge issue right now is finding dogs, right? Like if we could buy 20 dogs, we'll buy them right now. But
Right.
we just got back from a trip from Europe.
Hmm.
We traveled 4 different countries,
Yep. Yeah, I was
and
in Spain, France, Holland, and Germany.
Wow.
and we were
Yeah.
there solely to find police dogs.
Hmm.
And obviously, if we could find some good protection candidates as puppies, we will.
Right.
But we tested a bunch of dogs. How
Hmm.
many did we test this time?
I don't know the total, but 40 to 50
40 to
dogs.
50, and we
Yeah.
brought back six, one as a puppy, right?
Wow.
So, that's how, and those are all dogs that are bred specifically for work, right?
And brought up
Right.
Yeah.
for this. And
Hmm.
so even out of, the best European stock, we're still only getting, at best 10% of those dogs are going to make our selection process.
Does that number seem like it's changing over years? Like, is it getting better, worse, staying the same?
I think that there's more demand for canine now than there
Hmm.
ever has been.
Right.
And I think it is becoming a little bit more difficult to find the dogs that we want. And
But also, like we talk about it a lot, is like Europe is changing a lot too, as far as like how they're training.
hmm
Europe is kind of against a lot of training methods.
Hmm.
Um, they're banning training tools, prong collars, e-collars, stuff like that
Right.
because
because
they're bad,
they think
right?
that
Yeah.
it's abuse and yeah, for sure. As far as like sometimes they are used the wrong way, and
Hmm.
that's unfortunate. But so now maybe genetically, the dogs are less than ideal, right,
Right.
to
Yeah.
fit their style of training,
Hmm.
and then we end up with dogs that maybe can't make the cut for real work, right?
Right.
Um,
That's part of it. Also, some of the sports are being watered down, and
mhm.
that's what a lot of the stock is coming from. but yeah, basically, yeah, the European mindset of blame the tool, not how it's, not who's using it,
Right.
is definitely probably dumbing down the breeds a little bit. Now, I will say,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yes, sir.
So, when it comes to the genetics of dogs and the use or not using of tools, like how quickly do those genetics change per generation of dog? Like, is it like pretty quick from one to the next, or is it this is something you have to practice for years and years before you see any kind of significant change?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
That's a
Well,
great
really quick,
question.
one thing to think about is, obviously dog ears a lot different than humans. We've got, 10 times the amount of lifespan than they do, or, close to it or whatever. But so it's going to change a lot quicker in dogs. But,
Absolutely.
what do you got on that?
Well, I think that there's one, um, the way it could possibly work, right, is if you're limited in how you can train, right? So I would say everyone trains a little bit differently, right? But if you're reliant on, some tool for the dogs that are a little bit harder, and those tools are no longer accessible or no longer mainstream, you may change your breeding program because, hey, I still want to train, I still want to produce, but I can't produce this type of dog because I can't control him without these tools. And if I use these tools, I end up with a very large fine or in a cell. So you have to go, well, I still want to be in dogs, and I'm this is pure speculation, right? But so that could happen. Like if I'm no longer going, I want to breed the best of the best and the hardest of the hardest, the dog that is the most intense, and that's too much for what we're able to use for control anymore. And I still want to be able to compete or put my dogs into a sport, some type of venue where I can showcase what they are. I may have to go, okay, I'm going to breathe a little bit of softer this one, right? So this one's softer, right? And then next time I pair that softer one to another softer one. Like this could happen in 2 or 3 years where you end up with a much weaker dog. Now, I don't think that that's the only thing that's happening because I still see like when you take the best of the best that we have now, I think that a very they're a superior dog than the best of the best from what we used to have, right? But there's a very, very smaller number of them, if so trying to get that dog is very, very difficult. And for me, that dog, and everyone has a little bit, I think when you're in this field, um, you're looking for the dog that is social and stable. Well, for us, especially for personal protection, we want that dog to be a complete service animal, right? A dog that can, come in here, a kid can, interact with him, even if it's not the best interaction, the dog is super tolerant, he's socially stable, he's really happy and outgoing and just good with being here, right? And then on the other side, it is when we say so, it turns into an intense monster, and is willing to stay into the fight uh, with intensity until its last breath, and that's a very special dog. Um, but they're out there. They're still out there. There's just not as many of them. And I think even some of our harder dogs from the past. So I've been in this for 96, so almost 30 years, 27 years. So, um, yeah, 28,
Yeah,
something like
if
that.
anyone thinks they have like strong dogs that are genetically ideal, call me.
Yeah.
Like we'll come test them. Like we're always looking.
We're always looking to buy good
Yeah,
dogs for
we're
sure.
like we have a backlog, so let
Yeah,
us know.
we need more dogs than we have. So, we're
Right.
we're always looking.
But
And
that can't, to mention, not to get off topic, but I think even in America, we talked about it before that the way people train and what they look for in dogs dictates their breeding programs,
sure, I, I,
right?
I believe that. And the other thing that's happening is our training is so much better. So, like back in the day, training was pretty brutal. We only understood force, like especially when we're breeding dogs to bite. Like, we have to be more dominant. We have to be alpha. We have to do all these things that were just nothing but bullshit. But we didn't know any better, right? So we use a lot more force. And there's one of our PowerPoints, one of the classes we talk about like, you know, the more skill you have, the less force you need when you're communicating with the dog. And um, w- the thing is now we're so much better at training, right? That we can take dogs that might have been not even anywhere near the standard years ago and get them to look much better. It doesn't mean that they are capable of the job, but the training has gotten better. So it's a complex issue because you'll see. For example, there's a bite sport called IG. It's called IGP. It used to be called Schutzhund. After Schutzhund, it was IPO. Now it's IGP. But there was a champion IGP dog that looked like a absolute. IGP is a sleeve sport. Started in Germany. There's three phases: obedience, tracking, and protection. It's the largest dog sport on the planet. Most of the a lot of the European countries, I shouldn't say most, have dog bite sports. So, like Holland has a sport called KNPV, French has French ring, Belgium has Belgian ring. So, all these have been like these sports have been like the out where the police dogs have come from all these years. So, it's funny because police guys are always like, I don't want a sport dog, I want a street dog, but everyone has a sport dog, right? Like all the blood we have comes from sport lines, right? Now, there's been a lot of people that do what we do over the years that have gone, hey, you know what? I might have bloodlines that come from sport backgrounds, but my goal is to raise real world fight dogs, whether for personal protection or patrol. And they've catered their program to it. There's a few of us out there that are doing that. I still have sport blood, right? Like that's what everyone has. It's just funny because, you know, no one wants to say that they have a sport dog. They have a real dog, right? But
Right.
um, but, uh, the point is the dog there was this competition dog was a world level competitor, looked great on a grass field, and it couldn't walk through the vet's office because it was so scared of the slick floor. So like that's the thing. Like, we've got dogs out there that look like rock stars, flashy obedience, super tracking, great protection on the field, and then you change the environment on them and they fall apart. And that's what we see a lot when we're testing dogs.
But
So
in the police work, right, let alone in the civilian protection market,
Right.
that's like a whole new level of disappointment.
Right.
Like next level, right? Because at least in the police world, right, like they're going out to do work.
Hmm.
They have some standards that they know what to look for to some extent.
Right.
Right? But in the civilian market, like nobody knows what they're buying.
Yeah.
It's a shit show.
Right.
Like they're just buying pet dogs, basically,
Right.
to an extent. I'm not saying. I'm sure, and I don't think there's any ill intent either, right? Like I think a lot of these companies are meaning to put out good products, but maybe there's a mark missed, right?
Right. So that'd be sort of like somebody who's never seen a car and is going to go buy one and they can't tell the difference between a sports car and a,
yeah,
and an old,
Or
you know,
like they're
sedan or
buying a
something.
sports car, but it's salvage title, and like they took the normal engine out and they put like some random like Pinto engine in there, and like there's been like repainted 40 times, and there's like Bondo all over it,
Yeah.
and they're like, there you go, there's your protection dog.
There you go.
Like it looks like a protection dog.
Yeah.
It might act like a protection dog.
Mhm.
Is it actually going to do the job when it comes down to it?
Right.
I don't know.
we've had
What's our experience as far as,
we see people get ripped off a lot.
Yeah. I
oh
can
man,
imagine.
Yeah, and
so
and it's a fairly unregulated industry,
Hmm.
and
there's no
people
regulation.
and people pay very high dollar for these dogs. Like I've seen people that were shipped dogs
Hmm.
without any training. They got shipped the dog. They picked it up from the airport. It came with a manual on what to do.
This still
And,
happens.
and like
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
we had a client. this last year that brought their dog to us and said, "Did I get what I paid for?" And well, no, absolutely. If you bought a protection dog, no, right?
Yeah.
Like you did. I've had um, basically over the years, people have somehow found us and said, "I bought this dog. I don't know that I got what I paid for."
Right.
And so we test it, and we test it in a way that is very, very fair to the dog. Like
Mhm.
we give the dog every benefit of the doubt. We try to encourage it. We basically do a training session with the dog, and we have I think maybe
Two
one,
percent.
yeah,
It's about
I'd
2%.
say 1 to 2%
One to
of the
two
dogs we've
percent of the.
seen.
So we
Wow.
might go through 100 dogs testing,
Mhm.
like just random people that call us up. They're like, "Hey, I want some extra training. I bought a protection dog. I haven't worked him because I'm far away from whoever I bought him from.
Mhm.
Can I come do some training?" And they show up, and it's like the dog ain't gonna bite anyone ever.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Or he's completely unstable. The dog's already bit a kid. He's already like
yeah,
Yeah.
that's common
it's
too,
wrong
right?
on
Yeah,
every angle. And the problem is we get attached to our dogs.
Right.
So a person buys a dog and they're like, "Well, hey, I bought him for protection." We've had this happen many times where the guy buys the dog for protection,
Mhm.
gets him, he's like starts liking the dog, but he's like, "Shoot, my dog's scared of a plastic bag. All right, am I sure this is a protection?"
Right.
Like he sees skittish behaviors outside of this, so they find us and say, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, let's test him a little bit, and not this isn't, like a lot of people test dogs to break them.
Mhm.
That's the last thing we ever want to do when we're testing a dog. It's we can." Uh, we can get a picture of what the dog is capable of
Mhm.
without pushing him beyond those capabilities. So like we're not going to ever go, "Hey," because we see this a lot where people test dogs out of ego. Oh, like this dog came from this person. I know how to break this dog, type
Mhm.
of thing. And breaking the dog is never the right thing to do.
Right. That seems
Right.
counterproductive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
So, what we want to do is just, hey, let's see where the dog is at, give them a good experience. But if there are big holes, we also have to point those out.
Right.
But we can do that without sacrificing the dog,
Mhm.
and that's where it becomes kind of funny because sometimes people are like, "Well, I didn't see that," and we're like, "Well, I don't want to break your dog, but I'm telling you, if I push anymore, he's gone."
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the time it's so obvious that they recognize it. I had a lady bought a dog and she's like, "All right, we'd practice this." She'd actually gone through a little bit of training, and I said, "Okay, just tell me exactly what you want me to do." And she said, "I want you to come up and attack me, and I'm going to tell the dog to bite." So I'm in a bite suit, and
Mhm.
I said, "Okay," and I go up and I start walking towards her. She tells her dog to bark. I keep walking towards her. The dog starts backing up.
Yeah.
and and I'm like, "Do you want me to keep coming forward because the dog's already really nervous?"
Right.
And she's like, "Yeah, just like grab my arm or something." And so I grabbed her arm, and now the dog is like pulling her the other way at the, the leash, like
Right.
gone.
this
And
is how we piss a lot of people off,
and
by the way.
Yeah. I can imagine.
uh,
And
so
not piss people off, but
Right.
it's upsetting to people.
Yeah.
so she spent a lot of money on that dog to be a trained protection dog, and but she's like, "I love the dog now. Like
Mhm.
I get it. He's not going to be capable of what I purchased him for, but can you help us with some training?" And
Right.
so, we helped her with training, but at the same time, the genetics aren't there. Like
Right.
we can help you with some training, but don't think that we're ever going to get this dog to a level where I could say, "Yeah, you could be in a real world environment and this dog is going to function as a
Mhm.
protection dog because it's just not made up for it."
Right.
It's got the look, it's got the right ears, it's got the right body type, the right breed, but it's not the right genetics.
Mhm.
So,
So something I noticed, and maybe maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but it seems like at one point the there were different breeds of dog that have been sort of like the primary, I guess, what you would call police dogs, protection dogs, those sorts of things. So like there were Dobermans and Rottweilers and German Shepherds, and now there's Malinois.
hmm
Is there kind of a reason why that sort of progression happened, or is it just they found they were missing certain types of traits, or
well, I think there's a few things. So,
Mhm.
as far as like the Dobermans and the Rottweilers, they were never like many of those. There were a few of them that were
Mhm.
doing it, but they were doing more of like a handler protection type of thing rather than patrol.
Okay.
Um, so more short, close counter type engagements.
Mhm.
The Malinois is actually an older breed than the German Shepherd, and they were just not popularized, but they've been in police work for a long time as well.
Mhm.
Not so much in the United States
Right.
until the last 20 years.
Mhm.
Um, so I think the progression though has been the use of the dog, right? Like
Okay.
we didn't used to have the dogs that could load up in a a SWAT van or whatever, bunch of people, like the dog is stable enough to be somewhat trampled on and crammed in a tight space, and then, hey, get out, go find this guy, ignore these guys. These are all good guys. Find that bag. Like we have a much more, I think, technical use of the dog now,
Mhm.
and that is kind of how why it's progressing the way that it has.
I got you.
Now we need a dog that's gonna, hunt for a long time,
Mhm.
locate the person, possibly have to go into things that are really, really um, environmentally difficult challenges,
Mhm.
navigate those, and then stay in that fight for a while until, you know,
Yeah.
everyone else gets there to help help.
Mhm.
The dog's basically a distraction. Get a hold of this guy so
Right.
we can get a tactical advantage on him.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time I'd ever even heard of a Malinois was about 9 years ago.
Okay.
I had somebody, a friend of mine, that had one and that they were taking care of, that was going to be trained as a protection dog.
Okay.
Um, and like I said, I'd never heard of it before, and then a few years later, John Wick came out with the dogs in there,
Yeah.
and then now that's all everybody
Oh
talks about
man.
is the
Yeah.
Malinois.
Dude, everybody's got one
Yeah.
now, and it's just it's slightly sad to see.
Hmm.
Not only from a bunch of dogs out there, maybe bad breeding,
Right.
but also a lot of disappointed humans too, because
Right.
they all think that they're gonna get a decent dog, and they get
Hmm.
puppies, and they have good intention, and
Hmm.
they're going into the thing wanting to raise a protection dog,
Right.
and you know, it's extremely rare for them to be successful at the end of the day
Yeah.
to like raise that dog over a year or two, and at the end of the day say this dog's gonna work,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. So I think that's another big thing, that like because they've seen those sorts of dogs in
Yeah.
action, they just sort of assume that that's what they're capable of just on their
Right.
own.
Mhm.
If
You
you get
know?
a Malinois, it's going to be capable of this.
Right.
Nope.
I wish it were that easy.
Hmm. You know.
I wish. Uh, and,
Right.
and then the downside of it too is and this is goes for any working breed like German Shepherd, Malinois, working Rottweiler, whatever it might, whatever your working bloodline is, your breeder, if you're going to buy a puppy, if the breeder doesn't interrogate you, and you shouldn't buy a puppy from that breeder,
Okay.
right? Like if the breeder is not doing a background check and finding out your history and finding out your training goals and putting you through the ringer before they sell you a puppy. It's
Hmm.
not when it comes to working lines,
Hmm.
right? Like, and that's the problem is like Malinois got out there and we're kind of doing to them what we've done with every other breed. They
Hmm.
become
Mhm.
popular, and then we start breeding far away from what they were meant to be.
Right.
We breed for color, we breed for big head, we breed for
Yeah.
ears, we breed for aesthetics rather than internally what makes a working dog.
Hmm.
And that's when you start to see the breeds fall apart. And we're definitely seeing more nervy Malinois than
Hmm.
we ever have. They have drive, like they have the energy to do things,
Hmm.
but they don't have the nerves to. It's like basically like having a motor, uh, some good horsepower, but no brakes,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
then it becomes a dangerous
Hmm.
vehicle, right? So,
Yeah. So I know that like they that happened with spaniels. A
hmm
lot of spaniels. There was such a huge demand for those that they were just being uh, overbred and bred, and like
yep,
literally bred all of the positive traits out of them until they're
right,
just these little noise making machines that will bite you at the drop of a hat, and like
yeah.
they're
Cocker spaniels get a lot of bites.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
and so I would hate to see that happen to the Malinois because of their popularity.
That's
Yeah,
happening. It's
it's
happening right now.
happening.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
they're already
unfortunately.
past that point. It's done.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like,
Thanks, John Wick.
you know,
Yeah,
to put it in perspective, right? Like we are in deep in the industry, right? We've got
Right.
connections all over the world,
Mhm.
very tight connections, and it's hard enough for us to get. Like we can't even get I want a puppy right now. I
Right.
can't get one. Like they're not out there that I'm like that's gonna be a crazy good puppy, right? Like
Mhm.
first of all, 8 weeks old, hard to tell, right?
Mhm.
But genetic rarity is just it's tough, you know.
Mhm.
So if you're someone that's never had a dog before, or maybe you've had a dog, but you're not really in tune to the industry, you don't have connections.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're gonna get like the here's a dog out of the litter.
and sometimes
Yeah.
you get
Yeah.
lucky, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
people, I've seen people get lucky. I'm like, man, this is
We've
great.
had a couple clients
Yeah,
like, all right, that's decent dog for just random dog.
Right.
Yeah. But
but
it's like
few
what
and
do you
far
think?
between.
Percentage wise?
Five,
Like if you
5%.
go if you really know what you're looking at,
Mhm.
like if you study and you learn about the industry and you know who's producing good genetics and 5%,
That's
Right.
yeah, 5%. You get a puppy, 5%, you're gonna make a good high level dog.
Mhm.
Not saying the other dogs aren't gonna make like a good dog.
Right.
It's just not gonna be like this thing that you have imagined in your brain
Right.
of this like protection dog that could do it all,
Yeah.
right?
There you go. So, at how old do the puppies need to be before you can start to identify the traits that you're looking for?
I think red flags you can tell pretty early, but you know,
yeah. When it's obvious,
yeah,
you can see it at 6 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, like from that perspective, what you're doing is you're not looking for the positive things that they're going to develop. You're looking for the negative things you can just identify right away.
yeah,
hmm
red
And
flags just
okay.
washouts right away. Like, yeah, this is definitely not going to make the cut. But
So the pup that might be shy around new people,
Hmm.
the pup that might not want to walk on new surfaces, right?
Hmm.
Like things that seem insignificant, like, oh hey, maybe we can work this out. Maybe you can,
Right.
right? But typically, like when you're seeing uh for us, like when we're evaluating puppies, we want to see a pup that's super socially outgoing,
Hmm.
right? We get around a new group of people and he's just like, I love you
no,
guys.
yeah,
What a
no
right,
cares in the world.
right? Like
Right.
and which is kind of a lot of times I think people think like dogs that bite people need to be antisocial, and it's the opposite,
Yeah.
right? We want the happy-go-lucky dog that if we say so, you know,
Huge
put it on.
misconception. Huge.
Hmm.
I can't count how many times I get a phone call.
Hmm.
I think I have, I need to get some protection work. I think I have that dog.
He barks at everybody.
Yeah, and I could already tell he's going to make a good protection dog because he knows that like some people they're just not good people and he you can tell he gets very timid around them.
Hmm.
That's a dog that's just it's not comfortable,
Right.
Right.
you know?
And the thing is, when it comes to a bite dog, we never want them making the decision.
Okay.
Right? We don't use the dog for their decision making on like who to bite and who not to bite.
Right.
The human always makes that decision,
Right.
right? And so if we have a dog that is already like a little bit standoffish around people, we know if we start to like, let's say it's got a bunch of drive and we start to intensify those drives, now we have a dog that might make the decision at the wrong time.
Right.
So we need a dog that's really stable. So,
Hmm.
hey, bite when we say so,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, don't bite.
Right.
And that's a very difficult dog to find because you need all the intensity and the power, of the dog that is capable of the most high level deployment,
Hmm.
but also the stability of a service animal.
Hmm.
And that's what we look for in the protection dog.
Right.
It's we joke with it's like it's the unicorn.
Hmm.
It really is. But those are the dogs. Like if we're gonna put a dog into someone's home that's capable of really dealing with a threat, it needs to be the unicorn.
Hmm.
And that's what we spend our time finding. And once we find them, it's a long process of development because we
Right.
want to make sure by the time we put that dog into a household, it is as safe as you can be around,
Hmm.
unless otherwise said. We tell it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, thinking of it from maybe a little bit different standpoint, let's say that they weren't so hard to find. Maybe if it was much more common to find the types of dogs you're looking for, right? Would you say then that this is the sort of dog that everybody should have? Or is it still only like certain people, do you think, that kind of fit with that extreme measure of an attack or a protection dog?
I I think it is a mindset, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
people like you guys, right, that are obviously thinking about these things from a logical and reasonable point of view. Like
Mm-hmm.
we've we've had people call. I've had a few Karens call, like
Right.
like these liberals are like, I don't want a gun, but I want a dog, so I don't have to have a gun. And I'm like, you understand, like a dog is useless against a gun, right? Like
Right.
it's less lethal. Like
Right.
that's why that's it's not. We don't use a dog to completely deal with the threat.
Right.
The dog is a distraction, so we can deal with the threat,
Right.
right? Whatever it
Uh-huh.
might be, and obviously, like what if it's a scenario where your wife's home alone, hey, tell the dog to bite them and get out of the house.
Yeah.
Fine, dog's sacrificial at that point,
Mm-hmm.
right? But like the dog is definitely not a replacement for a firearm, but it's a mindset. So like if you have that mindset of like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about like how to keep my home safe,
Mm-hmm.
how to be a responsible person. I think a dog like this is absolutely
So
a precious tool,
Yeah.
right? Like it is because it does the things, and I want to finish my point,
yeah, yeah,
Christopher.
yeah.
I'll forget it, but it does the things that nothing else can do, right? It can
Right.
detect things that we before we can detect them,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a deterrent more so than you can't believe how well you obviously you know how much the dog can diffuse a
Oh
situation,
yeah.
right? Like you can have guns up on someone, you can have all kinds of things out, and then you bring a dog and they're motherfucking you to the end, right? And you bring the dog out, and they're like, "Okay, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm
Pretty
good."
much. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I've seen people do that.
Yeah, yeah. It's a huge deterrent in that
Yeah.
sense, and then it's also immediately in action if you need it to be, while you can
Yeah.
take your time to do some or have a
I've
little extra time to do something else that you need to do.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I've met inmates that would not blink an eye about fighting 6 or 7 people, officers,
Yep.
not think twice about it. But you bring a dog around them and they're sitting down and minding their business. It's like, yes, yes sir, no sir. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
great for that. So.
Yeah,
In the home, I think so. I like that. That's a great question and a great way to think about it. Like, should everyone if we had them everywhere, should
yeah.
everyone have them? I think it's one of those things where, like, yeah, as long as you're one of those people
As
that's
long as you're a
capable of
responsible person,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think in general, like people that ask that question a lot, like
Hmm.
I can't handle that dog, or I don't need that dog. Well,
Hmm.
the dogs we look
Hmm.
for that role for personal protection, we talk about it, they're unicorns.
Hmm.
That dog's going to be way easier to manage than
Right.
that Aussie that keeps biting your neighbor.
Right.
Like
Spaniel or
yeah, like there's so many other asshole dogs out there.
Right.
Um, by the time you're getting a dog that's ready to roll,
Uh-huh.
genetically correct, like everything we look for in a personal protection dog, we put those dogs in families with kids and
Right.
owners that don't really have too much time to dedicate. Of course, there's always dedication because it's a living being, but
Hmm.
you know,
and they have to go through training
yeah.
in order to bring the dog home.
Right.
But that's a dog that I want to be a part of my life
Right.
because it's such a benefit to me because it's a part of our family. It goes places with us. It's social, it's happy, it's fun,
Hmm.
and it's also kind of a fun way to show off too because no dog is going to be as cool as your dog,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So you get around your friends and my dog's way cooler.
Right.
Right? Uh,
There
so
you
yeah,
go.
like a lot of people call, they're like, I just can't manage that dog or whatever. I'm like, yeah, like if you're talking about like a dog, like a working dog that maybe isn't, the perfect dog for you,
Uh-huh.
then yeah, maybe not. But if we're placing a dog in your home for a personal protection role, it's
Hmm.
a pretty rare dog.
Right.
And yeah, that dog can, I can hand a dog off to a person that I don't really know too well, and they don't really know what they're doing, and within a day, they're like, this is cool
Yeah. Right.
because it's not that hard
Yeah.
if it's done right. But unfortunately, in the industry, it's not done right that often.
Yeah. I've met people that have dogs that they really have A, no business having, and B, they don't have any measure of control over that.
Yeah.
You
Right.
can tell, like, when they're going for a walk, it's like it's debatable about who's walking who,
Of
Yep.
you know,
course. Yeah. Yeah.
kind of
You
thing.
see that all the time.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need to normalize well behaved, well high trained dogs.
Right.
It needs to be a normal thing because I think in general it's not a normal thing. You see a very well trained dog and like people come out of the woodwork, right? Oh, that dog is amazing. I can't believe that. That's
Right.
crazy. Well, it
Yeah.
was just sitting there.
Yeah.
All he was doing is sitting there and ignoring things, and you're like, "That's an amazing dog."
Right.
All he was doing is ignoring things.
Right.
It's not even like he wasn't even doing tricks. He was
Mhm.
just sitting there, right?
Yeah.
And that's rare in society,
Hmm.
right? So we definitely need to normalize that,
Yeah.
right?
I think of that kind of like it's bad parenting. People who have animals that are just out of control.
Yeah,
It's like you've done just a shit job of instilling any kind of discipline into this animal, you know. So letting it,
training, not discipline.
okay, yeah, training.
'Cause it's not
Um,
all about that, but yeah.
right. Um, but
Well,
Discipline,
yeah,
right? It's
discipline,
gonna
right?
have impulse control.
Yeah.
That's
Okay. All
discipline.
right. Yeah.
yeah,
Was thinking
you
about the
know,
term wrong.
Yeah,
there you go.
you're thinking of like
Yeah. Yeah. As a
as a
punishment.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, kind of on that note, there's the other piece of that. Like, you see dogs with really little kids, and the kids are like pulling on them, poking at them, like, and just not borderline being abusive to the animal.
Yeah.
And they, most of the time, I shouldn't say most of the time, a lot of the time, the dogs just couldn't take it,
Please,
Sure.
parents, stop doing that.
And so, and I've had people argue with me and say, it's good that they're doing that because then the dog's not going to bite because they're being,
Oh,
whatever.
I
And it's
have
like,
two
I
little
just,
girls. I have two
yeah,
toddlers.
uh
One's turning 4, one's 2.5. And I kind of brainwashed them from an early age, but they could like care less about dogs. I almost have to like tell them like, "Hey, go pet that dog,"
yeah,
right? But I don't want my kids like going up to random dogs and petting them. Like you ever like we're at the park the other day.
hmm
This kid, I saw him. He's literally like will not listen to his parents. Goes up
hmm
to every dog that walks by, like and like just goes up to them. Bam, pet the dog. That kid's gonna get bit. All right,
right.
100%. One day he's gonna
So
get bit.
eventually, yeah,
Yeah. So I think there's you can elaborate on the negative interactions that kids
here,
have with dogs.
here's the other part of it is like when I hear people say things like letting the dog be tortured by the child desensitizes the dog to
hmm
child torture.
right.
It's people that haven't experienced what happens on the day when the dog's ear is sore or the dog has some type of physical discomfort.
hmm
And on that day, the child's been allowed to do this. And unfortunately, there are so many children scarred for life from that mindset, is because
hmm
now on this day, I'm not comfortable and I may have tolerated this. Now, when I say tolerated, I may be watching this interaction and going, this is a lot of anxiety in this dog.
right.
This is going to go south at some point, right? And now that point, like it accumulates to a point where you're you're pushing the dog and pushing the dog and prodding it and prodding it. One day it's in that corner and it doesn't feel like there's another way out, and now something really bad happens.
hmm
And unfortunately, that's way too common.
right.
So teaching children how to interact with dogs is critical. Now,
hmm
that being said, we do try to place the dogs that are very tolerant,
hmm
but we still like, we've got the two dogs that just went to different homes. We're very clear in the training of, we have not only printed material, but a lot of training, and we talk about like proper interaction with dogs. Like,
hmm
will a dog tolerate it? Should not be my interaction with a dog.
right.
My interaction with a dog should be like, what does this species like most in physical interaction?
hmm
And that's what I want to do.
right.
Right. So now like the dog gets really comfortable with those interactions because they're not just like how much can I tolerate?
Yeah.
It is like, oh, this is actually productive interaction. It's fun. I like it. I look for it. And the children learn it quick. They start to like it. The dog starts to like it. And it's a lot safer of a dog. So when you do have that one kid and it happens, the dog's like, all right, well, this one's a knucklehead, right? Like it doesn't know any better, right?
Right.
But if it's constantly like poking and prodding, and
hmm
you're gonna poke the bear that one day where the bear has a sore somewhere, or there's a toy somewhere, and when we're not recognizing these signs over time, and now you have a child disfigured physically and mentally, and
hmm
yeah, really, really, um, I couldn't, being in the dog industry for a long time, one thing that's really important is raising children to interact nicely with dogs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So kind of on that note, and we touched on this last time when I was talking to you and Wes, like the interactions that people have with their animals or have with dogs specifically. So, what kind of things do you see that they just should not be doing versus things that are much more positive for the dogs?
I think in general, people think that they're having great interactions with their dogs, but
Mhm.
majority of the time it's selfish upon the human,
Hmm.
right? So, if we have a ton of really productive interactions with a dog, then maybe some selfish interactions not so bad because he's like, cool, majority of my life we're always having a great time together and it's
Right.
always beneficial to me. And hey, you want to kiss my face, whatever, cool,
Okay.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
you know. But if we're always like kissing its face and like poking it and messing with its
Hugging it.
ears, hugging it,
Hmm.
and then it bites someone one day because it was like, dude, get off me.
Yeah.
I'm really not surprised.
Right.
It was, dude, you're not bringing any value to the dog's life.
Hmm.
And like people are like, oh, I always like pet it and love on it. And I'm like, yeah, but the dog ain't getting anything. Like, there's no value brought to the dog's life from that, right? You're not
Hmm.
making it fun for him. You're not making it happy, right? You're just having this like one way selfish interaction to you,
Hmm.
right? And I think a lot of people are going to be like, no, my dog loves when I hug him,
Right.
you know? So,
Yeah.
and George talks about this a lot too. So, um, I guess I'll let him elaborate on the hugs and kisses.
It's not polite communication. Like you won't see dogs interact with each other in that manner.
Okay.
Face-to-face interaction, with two dogs that don't know each other well is usually going to lead to something bad, especially two like intact, intense males. Face-to-face interaction
Hmm.
can be bad. Um, and we do that a lot. We put our face in the dog's face, and the dog most if you like you could look at pictures and watch the dog in the moment. You see the dog like
Yeah.
right, and but the person's super happy about it, right? Like
Yeah.
the smothering, the hugging, um, really. There's a great book that kind of talks about like our roots and where our physical interactions come from, our physical kind of interactions come from, and then like the canid, like where their roots are and their physical interactions, and
Mhm.
talks about like how we're two different species and we relate to things very differently, and
Mhm.
hugging is a big one. But anyway, the book is called The Other End of the Leash by Patricia McConnell. I encourage everyone that has a dog, pet dog, working dog, to read the book. Really, 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 it's a simple read. It's a light read. She's a great behaviorist, and she breaks things down into a really simple form.
Mhm.
And I've had a lot of people read it, like a lot of long time working canine guys, deputies and officers and whoever handlers. I've recommended this book to, and they read it and they're like, "Man, really, really good stuff. Like things I've
Yeah.
been doing wrong for all this time with my dog."
Right.
And it's simple things.
Mhm.
So really, really good one to read or listen to.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you praise your dog with hugs and kisses, and just read that book and see, yeah, hey,
So
your dog will probably be
yeah,
happier after.
what that makes me think of is what was that movie? Deuce Bigelow, where the guy's like, "Hey, fishy, fishy, fishy." He's like tapping on the
I
thing.
was thinking you're gonna talk about the scene about the this must be a mistake.
Oh no.
Remember that scene?
Which one is that? Mhm.
He walks in and there's like this big fat lady on the couch and he's like, this must be a mistake. And she's like, did you say
Is it
steak?
steak? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That always just makes me think of that. Is just like,
He's like knocking on the
yeah,
door.
he's just
Yeah.
like knocking
I don't know
on the
how fish
glass.
work,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think fish may be a lot more
Mhm.
of a simplistic animal. Yeah.
Yeah. They probably don't like being hugged and kissed either.
No, they're just like food. Yeah,
Right.
right. Like,
There you go.
yeah. So many misunderstandings, even in the training industry.
Hmm.
You'd be surprised on how many misunderstandings there are on how to interact with a dog.
Okay.
So many, right? Like how many?
Lots.
Yeah, training companies, trainers.
Yeah, yeah. I think everyone kind of has their things that have worked for them,
Hmm.
right? And then they adhere to those things. And for us, I think one of the things that's helped us is you know what we do. We're not married to. Like if I
Uh-huh.
find a better way to do something, we change it.
Right.
Like it's really important that training is an evolutionary process. I
Hmm.
I know some guys that have been in this longer than me. Some of the guys that I started training under many, many years ago, I look at their training today and it looks the same as it did back then.
Right.
And that it tells you like, hey, that's as far as they're going to be able to get with the dog. Whereas,
Hmm.
you know, um, we if we're not learning from every dog we work, we're limiting ourselves as trainers,
Right.
and that's something that I think um, really will keep anyone that's in any industry in the
Hmm.
forefront of it is like evolve, adapt, like right.
Right.
Yeah, that's the idea. So
There you go.
Amen.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Do you have any specific advice that you think that people just kind of in general should know, other than don't just buy something because you think it's what it's supposed to be, or
I so right now we have a client that is about to they purchased a few dogs over the years. They have not worked out for their purpose. So they reached out. They said, "I think we're ready." They had to put the last one they had to put down that was a dog. The dog bit the owner in the face,
wow.
and he's a great dude, and he's like, you know what? I don't care. Like it's not a bad bite. It's no big deal to me.
Hmm.
But like this dog's alone with my wife. He's
Hmm.
alone with my kids. He's like, if like now something happens
Hmm.
going forward, like what do I do? I already knew it was a possibility.
Right.
So anyway, they had to put the dog down. It was a really, really sad deal. Um, but it happens, right?
Hmm.
And so, he's like, all right, I'm gonna start over. I'm ready. Will you help me with the selection process? He's like, I
Hmm.
don't want to select the wrong dog again. And I said, absolutely. And so I think it's really important, like especially if you're thinking about a dog to be not only just a pet, but if you're thinking about a dog to be a pet that is going to be some type of task. Like, hey, I
Hmm.
want this dog to maybe be like maybe just a home protection dog. A home protection dog to me is different than a personal protection dog. A home
Hmm.
protection dog is a dog that is comfortable protecting in its home turf,
Hmm.
right? It doesn't have to be the dog that we, you know, do a more complicated task with.
Hmm.
Basically, like home protection, end of a 6 foot line, that type of protection work. But if you're thinking about things like that, it's definitely worth it, no matter where you're at, to find a professional to help you select the dog or help you evaluate the dog before you purchase it. Whatever the process is,
Hmm.
get someone that understands this industry a little bit to help you with your selection.
Right.
That's that's the I think really important.
Hmm.
Um,
So there's genetic limitations or limitations to that dog. You're like maybe not a full blown personal protection dog, but maybe a home protection dog, right? Like
right.
I think that term gets thrown around a lot in the industry, and it's just to basically place a dog that might not actually make the cut for real work,
Sure.
right?
Sure. But I think that's you've got to be upfront about that. I mean, like we do. Like we'll tell them, hey, look, this is not a dog for everything, but this is a dog that we could probably
It
get to
might
this
not
level.
even act. Like, that's the thing. Like we're like it's a home protection dog, but certain scenarios under certain stress, even at home,
It's going to fail.
it's gonna fail.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right? It's not like no, this dog is gonna protect your home, and that 100% it's gonna work.
Hmm.
No, it's like it's just not a very strong dog, right? Or
Hmm.
whatever term you want to use, right? It might not just be the dog you need or
Hmm.
want,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's a big thing. Is sometimes so a personal protection dog being the I guess you would say that the ultimate of dogs,
Hmm.
right? They're also very high price point, right?
Right.
Because it's a It's very elite genetics, and then it's a team of people working with this dog for usually at least 2 years before it's placed in a home. So it's a high price point. The a lot of times people are like, what about like a level down? And absolutely, like you can
Mhm.
get a level down, but a level down might not be what you want,
Mhm.
like when you really need it.
Right.
And so that's the tough part. Now,
Mhm.
now that being said, I think that there are ways to go about um, not taking the big hit of just buying a dog outright.
Mhm.
Um, but it's not an easy process. It's something that you have to have the time and the commitment and
You might go through 10 dogs,
right.
you know.
Mhm.
You know how
So
many phone calls I get? And it's like, I want a protection dog, but I don't need that crazy elite protection dog. I just need a dog that will follow my kids around, go into a grocery store, also have to, be cool on airplanes and if we want to go to a restaurant, we want to go to a restaurant and like at any moment if I just need him like if I tell that dog to bite someone, I need him to bite someone like no matter what. But nothing like crazy high level, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
Just like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro,
I just need him to do everything I've
Right.
ever wanted,
Yeah.
but nothing big.
Yeah. But that's all.
That's all.
the other phone call I get a lot is I have a King Corso puppy,
Mhm.
Rottweiler or a Doberman or something like that, and they're also like, I want this dog that could like I basically I I need him to do service work because I'm like I need an emotional support animal or something. I don't know why. Like I think people have like this thing of like I gotta like get this service dog so I don't have to like pay a deposit for rent or like I have no idea,
Yeah.
man. Like people have this like vision in their head to like have a service dog.
Mhm.
Like in general, like what they really mean is like I really need a highly trained dog that like nobody's gonna ask me or give me shit when I walk into a coffee shop with him. That's what you want, really.
Right.
So stop saying I need a service dog that's also a protection dog because all you want is a dog that can stay by your side and like behave
Right.
well, right?
Mhm.
And then they go into this thing of like, if we're at the gas station or something and like I need my dog to bite someone, like I need him to bite. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like the most rare. Like that's the unicorn.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? I'm trying to find that dog too. Let me know if you find it. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
um, but maybe elaborate on the breeds because a lot of people there's like this mentality of Corsos and Rottweilers and Dobermans and Pit Bulls. I
Yeah.
get these phone calls so often.
Okay.
I
I
have a Pit Bull, I have a Corso. I think he'll make a really good protection dog. Actually, that's why I bought him. I bought a Corso to become a protection dog. Like they
Mhm.
go through this whole process. They get the puppy and then they call us. Like I'm ready to train,
Yeah.
and I'm like, what are you looking for? And he's like, well, I need this service dog, but I also want this protection work, like
Mhm.
all together in this Cane Corso,
Yeah.
right?
and that's just an example of the King Corso, but
Yeah, yeah. Any breed,
typically,
whatever.
like if you want a dog to do a professional job, you kind of look at the breeds that are doing that job on a regular basis,
Mhm.
right? Like, is there a chance that one of these other breeds might be capable of some form or some level of it?
Mhm.
Absolutely,
Right.
right? But if you if they were capable of it regularly or
Mhm.
likely to be regular of it, we'd all be using them,
Yeah.
right? It's not like we care what breed we use.
Yeah.
We use the breed that's best for the job we want,
Mhm.
right? Like I'd use, so if the standard poodle was, hey, had the intensity, the drive, the lack of self-preservation, the things that we look for in our working dogs, I'd be using poodles. I'd have
Mhm.
little bows on their head and
Yeah. Right.
and that's what I'd be using for the job. But if you're serious about protection, you got to look at like what are the dogs that are going out and biting people in real world environments that are biting the right people at the right time that
Mhm.
need to be bit. They're dealing with people that do not want to get found, right?
Right.
They're they're if they're hunting these guys, like the canine's not coming out for you if for a DUI. Like you've done something
Hmm.
that requires this dog, and a lot of times it's guys that don't want to go back to prison, whatever it might be.
Hmm.
Like if the dog's hunting you, like he's hunting someone that is definitely capable of violence,
Hmm.
right? And so you want to if I'm thinking about like defending my home and family from violence, I want to think about the dogs that are capable of this on a regular basis,
Right.
right? And so that's why we it's not like we are um partial. Like we love the Malinois. And granted, I do love the Malinois. I love the Shepherd. I
Hmm.
love the herding breeds, no doubt about it.
Hmm.
But if there were better working dogs, I'd be using them,
Right.
right? If any of the terriers, if any of these dogs were better at what these dogs could do,
Hmm.
hands down, I'm gone. Like I'm the Corso, whatever it is. Like I'm using that dog,
Right.
right? You may find one that's capable of a low level of these things,
Hmm.
right? But you will not find one that's capable of what the high level herders are capable of. It just
Right.
doesn't exist, or we'd be using them,
Right. So
right?
probably not a lot of golden retrievers
No, no,
as
but
protection dogs.
I've been bit by a golden retriever, right?
Yeah.
Like I know it can happen,
Right.
right? But it's not from the same place that
Yeah.
these dogs are biting,
Hmm.
and it's not the same bite, and it's not the same, commitment. It's
Right. Right.
so
So, a lot of those people, with the Corsos and the pit bulls and stuff, and they're calling, they're like, I want a protection dog. You know, definitely is an intimidating dog at home. Like,
Oh yeah.
you get it to bark at people coming up to your fence and stuff.
absolutely.
But,
Hmm.
all right. So then we teach that like at a high level. Like, is that going to be a dog that can go sit down in a restaurant with you? Maybe,
Maybe. Yeah.
maybe, you know,
Hmm.
but I think they ask too much of a dog. You know what I mean? Like, you call and you're like, I want a unicorn, but I don't want to,
Hmm.
so
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Is there any Corsos that could do police work?
No.
Thought that-
Sorry, Corso
I
owners.
thought I
You
thought
should
there
have
were
a lot.
I
I
thought
don't know why you got this hate for Corsos lately.
I thought there was no absolutes in dog training, man.
You're right. There are no absolutes. I could say I've never seen one. That's that.
There you
There
go.
we go. That's
That's
better.
that. That's
But
that.
there is a possibility they're out there.
Right.
Absolutely.
You never know.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, no.
But a great dog, it's cool looking, and I'm sure it's a very nice
Oh, they're
dog to
beautiful
have
animals.
in
Yeah.
your home and as a family member, and
Well, that's how I feel about pit bulls. I mean,
yeah,
I know that they had a really bad rap, especially in the 80s. They were like the most feared dog
Right.
anywhere.
yeah,
They made it was such a
Hey,
big
if
deal.
pit bulls were the best at biting people,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'd be using them.
Yeah.
Right?
yeah.
Like they're
Yeah.
not.
They're not. I
But
mean,
there are some good ones out there,
yeah.
like as good
Absolutely.
dogs as good sport dogs. Like they're
Right.
they're out there,
Hmm.
and there may be a good protection dog out there too,
Right.
right? But
But it's
we're
still not what they're made for.
right.
Right. Just like if we put our herders into fighting animals or trying to take down bulls or whatever it might be,
Hmm.
that's not what they're made for.
Right.
Right? Like
Yeah.
that's not how they're bred.
You're not gonna see a bunch of Malinois going to chase down wild hogs.
Right.
Right.
It's not
Yeah,
what they're.
Oh, that's not
that's not how they're built. They can't do it.
Hmm.
Right? Uh, they don't have the same things, right? So
Right.
get not to go too far off on a tangent with this stuff, but yeah, we gravitate towards these breeds that
Hmm.
work for their function,
Right.
no other reason. Yeah. And even among those breeds, so like, we may test 100 Malinois and we'll probably get, if we test 100, we'll get 10.
Hmm.
And out of those 10, 8 will make it. So
Hmm.
it's a tough deal to find the right dog for real world work. Now, we see a lot of dogs that are maybes out
Hmm.
there and function, right?
Right.
Um, and sometimes it's never an issue, right? They
Hmm.
get through without something really bad, but um, because like we've been in this for a while and we've heard about so many failures on canine deployments, and um, we know what can happen if the dog is not completely the right dog for the job. We don't take chances there. So we'd rather, we'd rather tell like this last academy we just put on. We do 2 police academies a year. This last one we just did, we had to tell a guy who's a friend of ours. He's been through one of our schools already.
Hmm.
His agency was ready to get him his next dog, ready to send him to our school. We had to say, sorry, we don't have the dog. We had dogs, but we did
Hmm.
not have the right dog for we all the dogs that were what we felt were correct for dual purpose work were
Hmm.
already placed, and we had a few extras, and we're like, sorry, this we don't have a dog. We still
Hmm.
want to get you a dog, but you have to wait till February.
Gotcha.
And I'd always for us we'd rather do that. Say, look,
Hmm.
we'll lose your business. I get it. Like if the agency has the money and they have to spend it right now, you know, if that's the case and you have to go to school right now, we don't have the dog. Because
Right.
if we truly don't have the right dog, we're
Hmm.
going to tell you that because we're not going to give you a dog that's not capable of what you need it to do.
Right.
And that's the and I've made that mistake many times over the years where I get a dog and I'm like, all right, I think maybe with training I can fix this and I can
Hmm.
pull it out and get to a point where, hey, this is maybe functional. But the the tough part with selection and training is understanding what's genetic,
Hmm.
where your genetic limitations are, and what's not, what's training. And that's the really difficult part.
There you go. So what is the easiest way or the best way, I guess, for people to find you and what you got going on?
Instagram, internet, Canine Defense,
Yeah.
Instagram, or website, or just call us 602-677-7175.
There you go. For those that are just listening and not watching, it is literally the letter K dash and then a numeral 9
No dash, just
or just
Canine
K9.
Defense.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
All right.
Check us out on Instagram. We got a bunch of information on there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then the last thing we always do is what's your best dad advice?
Oof.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
I got daughters.
Right.
So, um, man, I could probably write a book about dad advice, man. Do you remember what I told you last time?
Not exactly, no.
I forgot what I did. It probably changed because it was like a year ago. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Right.
Um, but I think a lot of I need you to go first, man. Like, there's so many things that I could write a book. Like,
This is simple for me. So, I have a great wife and three kids, two daughters and a son, and I'll just motivation is important. Like I learned this from dog training, and my little boy, my middle daughter is a soccer monster. Like he
Hmm.
goes to soccer, and she just kill him. My little boy, he goes to soccer, and he's kind of like looking at the trees and
Right.
walking around. I told him there's some ice cream at the end of the game, man. If you could start scoring some goals. And, and,
Nice.
and and I didn't say score goals. I'm like, just give me your best effort out there, and we're
Hmm.
going for ice cream right after this. And ice cream isn't something he normally gets, and so he scored 2 goals 2 weeks in a row.
Nice.
Some good motivation. That's what I got.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure last year I told you something about like being a real man. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And we have a lot of dads out there that aren't necessarily real men in
Hmm.
today's society.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Like we got a bunch of, boys running around
Yes.
and they're not raising their girls as men, like us as men, right?
Right.
Um,
Meaning they're
so
not being present to
yeah,
raise them.
you're not raising your girls as someone that you want them to be with in the future,
Hmm.
right? So if you raise your girls and you're constantly the man that they should be with in the future,
Hmm.
it gives them something to go by,
Yeah.
right? But all these girls that are being raised with, dads that really aren't real men,
Hmm.
they end up making bad decisions throughout their life,
Right.
and they end up, older and, they're never going to be with a real man.
Right.
So I think as men or as dads, we should set our girls up for a successful future and be
Hmm.
the man that you want her to be with in the future.
Yeah. I agree. I don't usually give my advice, but I will this time, just because it's kind of building off of what you just said. my thought on this has always been that your number one job as a parent is to be an inspiration for your children.
Yeah.
That's it.
You know,
That's it.
that's really what it should be.
Really, really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Love it.
there
Love
you
it.
go.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you guys could come out. It was really good to see you again.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Great to meet you and actually
Yes,
talk
sir.
with you some.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Really
and
nice.
I would love to have you guys come out more, like, in the future and kind of keep us updated on what's going on and,
Definitely.
learn more.
Love
So,
to. Love
all
to.
right.
Yeah, you guys got a great spot. Great spot here, and thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And thank you for the whiskey. This is
Yes.
outstanding.
It was really good. It was
All
really
right.
good.
Thank you guys.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, you can now support the Non-Victim Nation by donating via listener support directly on Spotify. Remember, the story of your life is being written right now, and you are the hero.